want to welcome you all to our first virtual Ethics Club speaking event. I apologize for not having my video on. I'm having some Wi-Fi issues, as we've all experienced the last 6 months. But just to introduce myself, my name is Jackson Stewart, and I'm the Ethics Club president this year. We really appreciate everyone coming out today. Although it's in a virtual setting, we hope this is still going to be very productive and inspiring. I just want to take a moment to recognize some of the Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative team here at the David Eccles School of Business. So on the line, we have Dr. Abe Baksheshi, who is the University of Utah Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative professor and director. He's also a professor of organizational behavior classes at the U. We also have Ren Gallagher, who is the faculty advisor for the Ethics Club and is the assistant dean of finance and operations at the David Eccles School of Business. We have Candace Horn, who is the administrative manager for the Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative. And then also a huge shout out to Michael Lewis, Jeff Nielsen, Coley Pine, and Sheena McFarland for being so helpful and supportive of the Ethics Club and the Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative. Without these people, there would not be an ethics club on campus. There would not be a Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative. So all of our efforts are really going into making this happen. I just want to, before I introduce our speaker, just go through a couple more items of business. So you all need to attend the entirety of the speaking event for extra credit or to get passport points. There will be a passport points at the end, like a QR code at the end of the presentation. So stand by for that. And then by tomorrow, you're going to receive an email from Candace if your name is being submitted to your professor for extra credit. Then if you do have questions, please contact Candace Horn. You can find her email on the Eccles directory. But now to introduce our speaker, what you all are here to hear from today. So we have Erica, who is from Pluralsight. She's the director of software engineering there, but she's truly been an advocate and leader in the tech community for over 20 years. In her role at Pluralsight, she evangelizes their goal to democratize tech skills. She calls herself a lifelong learner and recently received her executive MBA from the University of Utah, where she was a class leader and co-created Women in Business events to further connect the Silicon Slopes tech community with diverse talent across Utah. And if all of that is not enough, she is also an entrepreneur who co-founded a small business in Park City called Park City Barnwood. She's a techie by training and a passionate mentor, and she brings an inspirational and empowering leadership style to all those who cross her path. So I'd like to welcome Erica to the microphone. There's going to be a Q&A with her at the end, so please use the Q&A feature on Zoom at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions that you might have. Other than that, take it away, Erica. You are on mute, Erica. You're good.
Gotcha. Thanks, Jackson. And also thanks to all the Ethics Club members and supporters, and of course also to Candace and Sheena, who are making this webinar possible today. As Jackson so over graciously introduced me, we'll be heading down a path today to determine if ethical companies exist, how to find them, and how to thrive with them. So the quick agenda today, we're going to go into, I'll have a little disclosure. Lots of really smart people do that, so I figured I should do something like that too. I'll do a little intro of who I am a little bit further, and then we'll really get into the guts. What's an ethical company? Specifically to you, how to find an ethical company, and how to thrive at an ethical company. So here's my disclosure. I'm at home with small humans who may interrupt us at any moment. Don't be alarmed. This is normal today. I am not being paid by the university. I do work for Pluralsight. They know I am here, but the things I am going to say today are all my personal thoughts, my interests. They don't reflect necessarily on Pluralsight or the university themselves. So a little bit about me, so you can get to know who I am kind of more as a, like, what is my guiding light? Where is my moral compass? Brene Brown inspires me to have courage and be vulnerable as a leader. I love to use laughter as part of my leadership style, or when I'm nervous. And basically I have to use laughter to survive these days, right? Like, better to be laughing than crying. I am very, very in love with RBG. She's just the most badass American woman there ever was. I love Simon Sinek because he inspires me to keep pointing at large sticky notes with a thoughtful look. And then, of course, Dr. Abe. I'm blessed to have a network that includes someone like Dr. Abe. He inspires me to be a better student, friend, mother, colleague, and human. So this is just a quick intro to me. Let's get to the good stuff now. So a study recently found that 56% of US workers define their current company as having an ethical culture. Okay, like that's a little more than half, great. But really think about it this way, like almost half of the US companies maybe don't have an ethical culture. That's really hard to kind of come to terms with, right? Like if you apply for 4 jobs, 2 of those companies might not be very ethical. That's really hard to figure out. How do you navigate this, right? And then that same study found that 25% said that they witnessed unethical or illegal behavior at work in just the last 6 months. Oh man, how do we try to find and kind of identify those companies, make sure that we're not working for them, and we try to avoid them at all costs, right? So what exactly would you characterize as an ethical company? I mean, broadly speaking, an ethical company could be just one that is not causing harm, harm to its people, harm to the environment, not exploiting people or its workforce, not using child labor, and producing products which are not harmful or dangerous. Generally, that's maybe what you would say an ethical company is. But I bet you there's no mission statements or company websites that say, we exploit our workforce, we cause damage to the environment. I imagine big oil doesn't say, we are doing bad things to the environment. They might be, they might not be. But what makes an ethical company? Like just like break it down, right? A company is made up of people. Behind the walls, right? As normally, when we think about a company that's not virtual like we are today, behind those walls of that building are people. In those conference rooms, in those offices are people. People make the company, right? People are making up that company. The company cannot take actions without the people behind the scenes or in those offices or on those Zoom calls. The people at that company are what makes it ethical. They're the ones making the decision, not necessarily the company, right? So we need to look further at how to create that ethical company. And it really actually does start with the people that work there. They're deciding what actions the company will take and deciding whether they're going to take the moral route or maybe not, maybe a little bit of an easy route. I love this quote by Derek Bell, who is an American lawyer, professor, and civil rights activist who's now passed on. But all ethical people strive to choose right over easy when confronted by situations that force them to choose one or the other. And these people that are choosing the right or the easy are typically part of an organization, a company, and they're making those decisions on behalf of their company, right? So if the ethical company is defined by the people within it, then we could say that ethical people can make up an ethical company, right? You add all these ethical people up and they create an ethical company. So looking individually at the ethical people that are making up this company, what types of values or characteristics would you like to see or would you expect from someone who is ethical? Maybe you would expect them to have respect. So I would say don't hire or do business with people that you don't respect yourself or who don't respect you, right? Do your best to build mutual respect. And when it can no longer be rebuilt, like let's say the damage is done and there's a relationship that is not respected, then you need to walk away. Ethical people have honor. Good people are a fundamental part of good ethics. What makes a good person? I would say a good person who gives special attention to doing the right thing, to making sure they do the hard thing, but the right thing. And these honorable people who may make up your company or make up a company you want to work for will be ambassadors for that ethical moral code that you want to find and you want to protect. They will exemplify the spirit of your organization if they have honor. Another characteristic that I found is integrity. At my company, we say, be your word. It's part of our values. And being your word is to say, I'm always going to do what I say. And if I can't do it, I'm going to admit it and fix it. When you are wrong, you need to own up to it and take responsibility for it and then make it right. Isn't that what we would all want if we were somebody who was wronged? We would want somebody to step up and be responsible, right? Treat others as you want to be treated. That's integrity. They also have passion. Passion is hard to measure and quantify people. Let me maybe use an example. Have you ever had another student in a group or a colleague who does not contribute, like literally does the bare minimum? Anybody have that experience? I have. Do you want to work with them next time? Do you want them on your team? Would you recommend another job or a promotion? No, you wouldn't. So you need passion, and that is something burning within them that people will go about. They don't just do the minimal effort to get paid and go home. They put in extra time sometimes. Maybe they volunteer for extra work because they're so passionate about it. And persistence. Persistence, I would say, a lot of people in awesome organizations have the will to persist. So they get kicked, they get beat down, they get no's. Entrepreneurs, I would say, have a lot of persistence. They probably get told no a lot. And in great organizations, they will keep going even when everyone else has lost hope. They behave with honor and integrity every single day. And they are not satisfied until they achieve their goals and the results that are expected of them. So I think it's important to also identify and maybe prioritize what matters to you. So when you're thinking about finding an ethical organization, what's most important? What gets you excited? What makes you happy? Or what makes you unhappy if your company isn't doing one of these things? Is it something like the environment, protecting the environment, taking care of the environment? Is it something like the ethical treatment of employees? Do you need diversity? I've struggled sometimes, let's be honest. In Utah, we're not the most diverse workforce. So I will actually go look at who is on companies' websites, who is in their leadership, who is on their board of directors. And diversity is important to me. And so I look for that specifically. Serving others. Is service to others a high company priority for you? Human rights, gosh, quite a few years ago, companies like Nike were being criticized for child labor overseas. So is that something that you look for that's important to you? Animal rights can be another situation, especially in the products that we use and consume. Are animal rights important to you as an employee? And also no illegal activity. I mean, I kind of feel like that's like honestly, like that should be everywhere. We should all agree that illegal activity is not warranted, wanted, or acceptable. But I have to admit, there are still companies that will do illegal activity, go into bankruptcy, change their name, and start business again. So be aware that even though we think this is an assumed thing, do your homework. So which of these matters to you? Take a list, write down your priorities of the top 3 things that matter to you. We're going to use those as we go through this webinar today. And also let's acknowledge that's not a complete list. You have other things that might be really important here. When you think about an ethical company, please do not think this is a complete and total list. Add your own in here. So how do we find and go about finding an ethical company? Feels pretty overwhelming, right? Let's walk through. I'm going to give you, in my eyes, there are 6 areas to consider when evaluating a company to find their ethical compass. So let's walk through each one. Mission and vision statements. All right, most companies have these. It's a big deal. Like everybody wants one. You can go find the mission statement for basically any public company and also a lot of private companies and nonprofits on their websites. It can provide insights into their strategy, market, and purpose for being here. And many companies use it as their North Star. Like when Jackson introduced me, he said, democratizing tech skills. That is my company's mission statement. But let's take a look at a couple and see what your thoughts are. So here's one: to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. This sounds like maybe a big energy company, right? Maybe a big oil company. Sustainable makes me think green energy a little bit. So I kind of know where these people are playing, but can I get a sense if they're ethical from this, or they have good moral standing and fiber? No, you really can't. That was Tesla's, as a note. That is Tesla's. The next one, spread ideas. Many of you, if you're like me, watch a lot of podcasts and talks as you're waiting, driving. I listen to a lot of TED Talks. So this is TED's. Is this something that you feel like can show you that TED has an ethical, moral, and kind of a good North Star? Not necessarily. It doesn't necessarily get me to that level. This one is pretty interesting. To inspire humanity. Gosh, I'm thinking to myself, like the Peace Corps, the United Nations, United Way, maybe a nonprofit for sure, right? To inspire humanity. It sounds so like amazing. Like my heart is getting excited about this. But the last part of it is both in the air and on the ground. This is actually JetBlue's mission statement. So, I think they've got some lofty goals there, like to inspire humanity as you travel the world. I guess, right? You can be inspired when you travel, but I also don't know that it tells us anything about the ethics or morals of JetBlue. And then, this one's really interesting. These are 4 values that a company that I'm familiar with follows. So respect, integrity, communication, excellence, like 4 basics. Who would want to work for this company? I feel like maybe I could. Yeah, I mean, I can get on board with those 4 things. That sounds reasonable to me. This is actually the value statement for Enron. Enron is a very naughty company that decades ago got caught doing very, very illegal things. And basically all of their board and executives were indicted, and many of them went to jail. So again, the mission and vision statement can be a clue, but can also be deceiving. It can't give you the whole entire picture. And the last one I have for you, this one actually sounds pretty great. I really like the fact that this one says what they're doing. They're building product. They are not creating harm, unnecessary harm, and they're going to put focus on environmental crises. This actually is really good. This speaks to me. I love it. I understand it. I bet many of you can guess who this is. They are very much in social media pushing the environmental causes. This is Patagonia. So to me, some of the mission and vision statements that we've reviewed can actually be insights into what a company is willing to do. Now, the next area is going to be a little more businessy than maybe some of you might be used to. We're going to talk a lot about for-profit and nonprofit, and then SEC filings. SEC stands for Security Exchange Commission. They are a regulated body in the United States that oversees business for public companies. So let's dive in. Okay, so for-profit companies, there are private and there are public. But generally, for-profit companies have investors for which it may give equity dividends to as shareholders. That's okay, right? Like, I actually work for a for-profit public company. Pluralsight is democratizing tech skills, and they're for-profit. And I have stock in the company, and many other people do as well. You can still be a good company and be a for-profit company. And then there's nonprofit. Nonprofit seeks donations from individuals, foundations, and corporations. But at the base of these two ideas is the fact that for profit, they're expecting if you invest in this company, you'll get something back. You'll get something, right? You'll get a dividend. The stock might raise its value and then you can resell it and make a profit. And then on the nonprofit side, the people that are donating do not expect anything back. They expect the company to use those dollars wisely to complete its mission and to serve whoever they're serving. They do not expect to get anything back. And so generally, for-profit organizations, the power is with the shareholders and the board of directors. The board of directors can remove executives, and those board members are put in place by shareholder vote. So there is a lot of power that actually happens at the shareholder and board of directors level. And it can be really hard to measure the ethics behind a for-profit company, and especially those private companies, because they don't have to share their financial statements online like a public company does. So let's dig in a little bit further. I would suggest that maybe a starting point for some of this is to consider if the company you're evaluating has a robust and transparent corporate governance program, things like an ethics hotline, compliance audits from a third party, or transparency about follow-ups to that ethics hotline. Both for-profit and nonprofits should have a program like that to ensure that people are protected if they're going to maybe be whistleblowers or ask questions of their executive team about how they're staying compliant and the ethical and moral values they keep. So let's talk about and focus on SEC 10K filings. So I know this is going to get a little more technical, but there is a lot of detail in a 10K filing, which is required annually by a public company that can give you insights into what this company does and how it works. I want you to focus on a few key areas. The first one is just general item 1, business. It tells you the perspectives on the business, what markets it's in, and what's driving it. Generally, it'll tell you how the company operates. That can just give you a nice perspective of where they're playing and why it's important. The next area to focus on is 1A, risk factors. So it includes information about the most significant risks that apply to the company and its securities or its stock. And be leery of risk factors which can be easily hidden from an audit, or rules can be broken. The next area to think about are 1B, unresolved SEC comments. This is where an SEC auditor has found something in this business's past and it has not been responded to in a reasonable amount of time. And they will state, the SEC will state in the 10K filings, this is not resolved. So it's good to kind of see if they might have gotten into a little hot water last time when they submitted their 10K annual paperwork. The next one is legal proceedings. This is really important, okay? Like, requires the company to include information about any pending lawsuits or other legal proceedings. My company, I looked at my company's 10K when I first got here, and I noticed that we had a lawsuit going on. And so I dug into it and I brought it up at a town hall and asked what this was all about. So there's really good information you can get out of these legal proceedings, and it's there for your investigation. And then certain relationships and director independence. This is an area, item 13, which can state, who the officers are of the company, who their family members are. Maybe there's a conflict of interest. And it actually indicates each director and whether the director themselves is independent. So that's really interesting to kind of read and see who's related to who and who might have family members, maybe that are in, I don't know, the US government or another country, foreign country's government. This next one is kind of complicated. Unqualified opinion versus qualified opinion from auditors. An unqualified opinion is issued if the financial statements are presumed to be free of material misstatements, meaning it's cool, I trust everything in here. An auditor will give you an unqualified opinion, which is a good thing. An qualified opinion is a reflection of the auditor's inability to give a clean audit opinion, meaning I don't know that everything in here is trustworthy and true. So if you ever see on a 10K statement something that has a qualified opinion, qualified is not good, okay? So that's another one to do a control F and find in your 10K statements for the one the company you're looking at. And finally, I swear this is the last piece of 10K filing notes. Notes are so important. There are just tons of juicy tidbits and information in the company's own words about items they want to explain. So pay attention to the notes. Oftentimes they will try to explain away something that looks sketchy, something that an investor might balk at, and they will try to explain in those notes. So take a look there as well. Nonprofits actually have a similar thing that is not as complicated as a 10K. It's called a Form 990. So when you search for annual reports on a nonprofit's website, typically they will post or give you links to their 990, or you can use an application, a website called Glassdoor. That's where all nonprofits with over $100,000 of annual contributions have to post a 990 form. And this form is great. It basically tells you a lot of the same things that a 10K will. This is a copy of United Way's Form 990. And I have to admit, this form was 328 pages long, okay? So I understand the hesitation to jump into a 990, but some of the things in here are really important. Recently, the US government added requirements to disclose information of potential conflicts of interest, compensation for board and staff members, and details having to do with financial accountability and avoidance of fraud. So take a look at the 990 if you are looking at nonprofits. Not all nonprofits are the same, right? Nonprofit just means that they're tax exempt status. It doesn't necessarily mean they have an amazing moral compass. Hopefully they do if they're going after a nonprofit status, but you should still check into them. Okay, moving on. Employee feedback. Oh my gosh. Employee feedback can be really valuable, right? If you are working at a company that you feel is being unethical, speak up and tell other outside communities about this. That's something that we rely on in the American culture, is like this feedback, right? Like, oh, who's going to go to Yelp and look at a restaurant and make sure that they've got, a good rating before they go eat there or dine there? It's part of our culture. So employee feedback can be very valuable. I would also suggest that you look at some independent websites. Who's ever heard of Glassdoor, Indeed, Vault, some of those? I use these myself. I've posted on them myself, but just be a little aware. Well, Indeed and Glassdoor are actually owned by the same company. And also, this was an interesting conversation that I had in my EMBA class. Some companies actually ask and even incentivize their employees to contribute to postings on things like Glassdoor and Indeed. Has anybody's company ever asked them to do that? Or said like, hey, we're awesome, share how awesome we are on Glassdoor and you'll get some swag, like a t-shirt. Okay, that's not illegal. But just be aware that some of the postings that you may see on these websites may not be from employees who are doing it because they love it so much. It might be just employees who want a t-shirt or a hat or something like that. Also, these reviews that are on their websites have things like overall company review, work-life balance score, job security and advancement scores, culture scale. I didn't find any, literally zero, when I was investigating for this lecture that had an ethics score. Like, that doesn't exist. It doesn't. So really the closest thing I found is culture. And when I've looked at the culture, there are areas that I think can actually show ethical and moral behavior. So a few things here. The company is open to respectfully challenging each other, right? Like, you can stand up and say, I disagree. That's welcomed. Transparency is really important. More transparency, to me, is accountable to that ethical moral fiber. From my company, open communication is top down in a weekly town hall. Our executive stands in front of us every week for an hour and tells us what's happening. We get to ask questions, and they're super available. So that's very transparent, and I appreciate that. The company protects anonymity. One thing that my company does to protect anonymity is in these town halls, we provide an anonymous feedback opportunity using an anonymous bot in Slack. So it protects employees from kind of outing themselves when they disagree. It's actually been really beneficial and created some really great and open conversations that I don't think would have happened otherwise. And any company that really has this third-party ethics hotline and follows up on it, to me, has a great culture. I was actually investigating my own company recently around this, and I called our third-party ethics hotline and I started asking the poor woman, bless her heart, who was helping me, and I didn't log an ethics complaint. I just asked her 1,000 questions about what this is and how does this work and how does this get reported back and who follows up and how do you know that my company's taking action? And so I actually didn't love all the responses from my company about this. They basically said it goes to the executive leadership team anonymously, and then they take care of it. And I thought, what does that mean, right? And so we started to ask a lot of questions. And in the end, the company decided to share the feedback through the ethics hotline and then list the actions taken to fix the problems. So that was fantastic. Best places to work awards. This is something that I kind of giggle at because, okay, let's be honest, like, you have to submit and you have to pay for the process for these best places to work. My company has submitted a few times and won some things, but I have a friend who works at another company, and she was telling me about a really hard time at their organization where a lot of the upper leadership was replaced. And as they were replaced, they continue to have a very undiverse, basically all male executive team. And then the leaders under them just started being replaced with all men. And, you know, she felt pretty sad. They had broken the parity pledge. And if you don't know what the parity pledge is, it's basically that companies take this pledge to say that they're going to interview at least one woman and one minority for each senior leadership job. And the day after she saw this announcement of 5 new leaders who were all men, she was told that her company won the award for the best places to work in 2019 for women. And she just thought, oh my gosh, this is just a punch in the gut. Like, this can't be real. So also take it with a grain of salt. These can be very good places to work, but they often lag. The timing of the awards come out a year or 9 months after the actual evaluation happens. And companies do sometimes pay to be part of these awards. So ethical scoring is something that I was super excited in. If anybody wants to actually start like an app let me know, because I want in on this. Today, through my investigation, there's not a one-stop shop for finding ethical companies. And I would love to create like some sort of scoring app. That would be amazing to me. So here's a few what we call ethical scoring indexes that exist. Some of them are pretty good. The first one here that I'm going to talk about, Ethical Award. So this is a company that was started in 2002, and they wanted to have some substantial growth in the ethical shopping movement, so that like social people, consumers, could understand where their goods are coming from and make sure that brands and retailers knew they existed and would try to get on their awards. It is funded by people and organizations buying their research and data or subscribing to it. So it's not funded by the companies who are in it, who they suggest are ethical companies, which is pretty good. The next one is the Ethical Consumer. This one's been around pretty long. And I love their manifesto that they have online. So they have a manifesto that states that their top 5 elements are helping you to challenge corporate power, democratizing the market, transparency of research, letting companies know to buy ethically and be ethic. And then number 5 is just wider political action. So they're actually looking at candidates and the political landscape and endorsing candidates. Now, they are also, they do not take money from companies. So they are kind of a nonprofit funded. And I really like that in the Ethical Consumer scoring. And then the last one I'm going to talk about is Ethisphere. And this actually creates World's Most Ethical Companies Award every year. And there's lots of different categories. But one thing that I didn't love about them is that companies submit and pay for their application. So you can submit and you provide all this documentation of how ethical you are, but you're also paying them to do that process. So just be skeptical of things like that. Do the homework. Don't just say, oh, they have this World's Most Ethical badge on their website. Amazing, I'm going to go after this. Because they might not have ethical morals the way that they're paying to get that award, right? That doesn't feel awesome. All right, board of directors. We're gonna go into a little, I'm just gonna call it professional stalking. I'm gonna be honest with you. It feels a little weird, but you have to do this, right? You have to Google the board members. Who are they? What are the previous companies that they've worked for? Are there former colleagues that are currently incarcerated for doing unethical business practices? Look at their social media presence. Everyone today is on social media, especially big companies, board of directors, and executives. And what that will tell you is what they're passionate about, right? Look for those passions that align with your passions of what you're looking for in an ethical company. Is diversity important on their board? Do they have previous nonprofit work in their history? That can be kind of a thumbs up sign. And who is in their inner circle? Who are they running with? Who are they actually interacting with inside the business world and outside? And are those good ethical people who are supporting good environmental practices, hiring practices, and those types of things? So do your homework on those executives. Now, once you've found the company that you want to work for and you get in the door, which I know you all will do, how do you thrive there, right? How do you show up and feel like you are winning at life, right? So I've got a couple of ideas. First of all, speak up. There was one example recently where when I first started at Pluralsight, I was just holding it in. I just was showing up and trying to get the lay of the land, who's in power and how do I need to fluff their ego so I can, not make them upset, right? I mean, let's be honest, who's done that? One of my colleagues pulled me aside after a leadership meeting and said, Erica, you are not speaking up. You're not showing up. You're not lending your voice. Why? You are here for a reason. You are here to lend your voice. We need you. We need you engaged and we need your opinions. And that moment, I flipped, right? I turned it on. I was like, all right, here I am. Watch out. So speak up. They want to hear your voice. They want you to be curious and they want you to challenge them. Get involved. Don't sit on the sidelines. You can change your company culture. You really can. I've seen it happen at workplaces where individual contributors can actually change the culture. Now, I've also seen it change for bad, right? Because then all the good people leave, but you can change the culture for good. Get involved. Create an ERG. An employee resource group is a group of people who are focused on something important at that company, and they're started and built upon individual contributors. So at my company, we have one called C Color, which is for our people of color and all the people that support the people of color. Belonging, for just general, like, you know, it could be belonging that you belong to a brewer, you want to brew beer. It could be belonging that you belong to an LGBTQ plus. It could be that you belong to a soccer team, right? And then there's climate action groups too. So there's these employee resource groups that you can start at your company. If one doesn't exist, just start one. Create that sense of community. The community can be started pretty easily by doing maybe like book clubs, right? So anybody interested in reading this book that I want to learn more about, we have a community of Slack channels. One, my favorite, called Other People's Pets, right? I mean, you just go on and there's just pictures of other people's pets. Create a sense of community, create your tribe. Also create norms and culture. So share good norms and culture with each other. It really is contagious and it can make a difference in that community, in your company. Never forget your moral compass. This is so important. And you know, I have to admit, companies can change. Companies definitely can change. Just like that example where my friend's company had this lack of women leadership that just came into place. Companies can change. And don't forget your moral compass. If the company no longer does what you are loving from a moral and ethical standpoint, go find one that does. Go find one that is worth your time and energy, because one that doesn't support your moral compass is not worth your time and energy. And then reconsider if the company's ethics change. Reconsider that decision. Go find one. Get out of there. All right. So a quick recap. What is an ethical company? We reviewed how to determine what an ethical company is for you, right? We talked about how to investigate and, okay, I'm going to be honest, maybe stalk the company, their board of directors, watch their employees, watch social media for how this company is acting, and the people that are representative of that company, how are they acting? And then finally, keys to thriving at an ethical company. You will be so happy if you follow your moral compass. It is so worth it. Okay. And then just last, I have just loved talking with you today. I so appreciate you spending time with me. I hope we've built some good rapport and trust, but I have one more lesson to share. So at the beginning of this slide deck, I showed a disclosure, right? Like something about kids interrupting and I work for Pluralsight and things like that. But I also wanted to share one last thing. In that disclaimer, in the disclosure, I said all content herein is plagiarized and is not my own content. So lesson learned here, I paid a company to pull slides and information from other slide decks that were not my own. Do not trust others to do important work for you. That's the lesson. Do not trust anyone else to do that homework on what company is best for you, ethically and morally. Utilize your own investigation of companies and their employees, and trust and follow your own moral compass. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erica. There are some questions in the Q&A. If you would like to open that up and answer ones that maybe you think would be appropriate. I don't want to throw anything at you that you don't feel comfortable answering.
Yeah, let's see. The first one here, wouldn't diversity of thought, experience, expertise matter more than diversity of appearance? Yes, I completely agree with you. I would agree that what you're saying is true. Diversity of thought, experience, expertise do matter more than appearance, ethnicity, background, and things like that. But I have to admit, as someone who has been in the tech industry for over 20 years, oftentimes those who look different than us are bringing also different thoughts, different experiences, different expertise. There's also hidden diversity. So maybe disabilities, right? Maybe veteran status. Those are things that you cannot see and are actually very important to diversity in the workforce. So you're right. There are not always diversities that are known to us just in the way that we look and the way that we present ourselves. But I have to admit, oftentimes having a diverse workforce does include people that look like you, right? Because they do have a veteran status, they are disabled, but also people that don't look and talk like you. And our personal biases do come into play there. Biases are hard to break. And so I love that kind of when we think about diversity, we're thinking about diversity of thought and the diversity of culture, gender, things like that. Good question. Let's see, we've got one here that has a plus on it. When we talk about ethics, is there a difference that you see between your personal ethics and business ethics? Gosh, I think so. I think there, over time, I have grown these two a little more separate. I think when I was much younger and new in my career, my business ethics were my personal ethics. Like they were one and the same. I couldn't pull them apart. But as I've gotten a little older, I'm a seasoned veteran these days. I have actually found that my personal ethics are driving me maybe a little bit away from what I thought were my business ethics. I do think that my moral compass and my business ethics has gotten more judicious, I guess, in the later years of my career. I'm very picky right now about who I work for, not just the company, but even the leader within that company. And I think that shows that my personal ethics are pulling maybe my business ethics along with me a little bit more than I definitely did earlier in my career. Let's see here. Good thought, Bonnie. Love that. Dr. Cadman added some other evidence in here. Great. Okay. Oh, thoughts. Okay. Kyle, I think that's how you say your name. Kyle asked, thoughts on the Coinbase CEO memo that went out a couple of weeks ago. Yes. So Coinbase memo, remind me again what that had to do. Hold on, there it goes. All right, we'll see if Kyle, if anybody can remind me what that, Jackson?
Yeah, I can kind of pipe in. So basically he was just discouraging politics at work, like sent out like work-wide memo.
Yes.
But, a lot of the issues that people are discussing are not necessarily political. So thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we laughed at this the next day at work a little bit. So basically saying, like, if you discuss politics at work, you will be fired and you have like 1 week to decide if you're going to stay or go. I think that is not a very open and curious and transparent culture. If you're not allowed to speak about politics, I do think that there is a limit to kind of professionally speaking about politics. Obviously, you should not be personally attacking anyone with words or otherwise based on their political standing or what they believe in. I think it is one of those areas that I have had conversations at work in the past. And I feel comfortable that politics should be a part of our culture. It's interesting that Americans see politics as a risky conversation. When I was overseas in college for a month in Italy, or a semester in Italy, they never stopped talking politics with me. It was part of, kind of their inherent nature. They're curious and they want to talk about it all the time. And so, yes, I think politics needs to be part of our conversations. We spend a lot of time with humans at work, and that should be something that you're professionally sharing and respecting each other, and able to talk about politics. So yes, I would not work at Coinbase. Cade asks, have you ever thought of creating your own company to establish positive ethics? No, not necessarily. I love that idea. If anybody wants to start an ethics scorecard or app with me, like, man, let's make it happen. I'm excited. I would love to. It sounds interesting. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed speaking with you and sharing my views on ethical businesses and how to thrive at them.
Thank you so much, Erica. All right, there is the lovely QR code for all of you who need it. And thank you everyone for showing up today.